Welcome to the Heartification Podcast, where I interview people on how art has affected their lives and what it means to them. Art has a very special place in my life. It not only makes me feel happy, but it allows me to make others feel special. This podcast is all about how art has made an impact on others' lives, for all ages, all backgrounds, and all walks of life. You can find more about this podcast guest in my show notes. Without further ado, let's welcome my next guest. She's a speaker, author, and entrepreneur. Please welcome my next guest, Debby Montgomery Johnson.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. Yeah, thank you so much for being on my podcast.
My absolute pleasure.
So the first question I always ask is, how do you define art?
I did my homework on that one because I knew you were going to ask me that. And it's really interesting. So many things come to mind when I hear of art, and it's an expression. It's a form of feelings and thoughts. But there's so many different things of art, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with you. Like, my definition is any way you're able to express yourself and let out your emotions, and kind of just, if you have like a lot of anger, for example, you just let it out in if like your outlet is dance, you let all your anger out in dancing or painting. And I think it's amazing. And back to your point, you said like there's a lot of art around us. When I was little, I used to just think art was painting, sculpting, designing, just a few simple things that people think of. But if you actually think about it, this computer that I'm looking at is art. Someone had to design this. The house that I'm sitting in is art. Someone had to design the house. So there's art all around us, which is actually really cool.
Well, and I wrote it down too. There's language arts, there's visual arts, there's fine arts, graphic arts, modern art, dancing. When I originally heard of what you were doing, I thought about painting, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm not very good at art. But then I looked around. I got to show you this. It will still crack you up. I have to. Whoops! Can you see it?
Oh, the green screen's kind of taking it.
There. So try and get it.
I can like half see it.
The green screen is it. Well, what it is my grandchildren send me pictures. And this particular one was a thank you note. And then I got one for Mother's Day, and it had a picture of an envelope, and inside the envelope was a red heart.
Oh, that's so sweet.
You. So for me, this is artwork and something I'm not very good at, but I certainly enjoy getting that from my grandkids.
Yeah, definitely. That's so cute. I love that.
Yeah, it's fun. I'm sorry it didn't show. It's a new green screen.
It's fun. I could see parts of it. And what art forms are you exposed to?
Well, I like to play the piano. So for me, it's musical arts. And I have pictures all around me. Some paintings, some photographs, those kinds of things. But I was thinking that some of the things I love the most is floral art. It's like Monet's or pictures. I saw something on your wall somewhere. Well, I love that one on your wall there, the red one. I have the tulips. I love tulips. My daughter loves tulips, so I've sent her artwork with tulips in it. So I guess I'm drawn to the flowers.
Yeah, that's awesome. So many people can be attracted to different things. And, if you look at a painting, so many people can have different perspectives and interpret the painting in a different way, which is really cool as well.
Well, for me also, I love flowers, period. So for, a lot of my art out on my patio is orchids or whatever flowers I'm growing outside and arranging them in a really pretty way. So it's a natural, nature's art.
Yeah, definitely.
Can't get any better than that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And how do you use creativity in what you do?
Well, I do a lot of things, but I think when I was on your dad's podcast, my creativity comes from interviewing folks and having my own podcast, which is fun because I like stories. I like to hear of other people's the stories of their lives, things that have maybe happened to them, that they might have hit rock bottom and they've found a way back up. And I love what you're doing too, because a lot of your artists have had some sort of trauma in their lives or disability, and it hasn't stopped them. And so that's what I like to do, is get creative and find those folks' stories and elevate that so we can elevate them. And then, I think people might be a little bit kinder to each other once they understand why people are like they are.
Yeah, definitely. Even with my podcast and everything, my favorite thing is talking to all of the different interviewees and hearing all of their stories and how they perceive art and how art has played a role in their lives. And I find it really interesting that so many people from different aspects of life, different ages, if you actually, come together, art's in all of their lives and whatever they do, which I find is really cool.
Well, and I think it's really important too, as children, that we have it in schools. And over the years, I had a lot when I was young, and my kids did also. I put them in different art programs, but that is changing. And if the first things to get pulled out of school are the arts, well, that's where our creative juices are. And there's, it can get messy, but messy is good sometimes. And I love, when I see my grandkids, that's where I see the art primarily. I don't see them a lot, but when they're around, the expressions in putting I always say jello, it's not jello, it's oh my gosh, I'm having a brain cramp. Legos together, or some of the Play-Doh, when they put Play-Doh together and coming up with some fun things on their own, and not necessarily with packets or other people's instructions. Just give it to them and see what they can do. And it is extraordinary, especially Lego building. My grandsons and their Legos are phenomenal, and the imagination station that they use is really quite cool.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. And I see writing as a form of art. So do you feel you were able to express yourself while you were writing your book?
Yes. And it's interesting. I was thinking back when I was younger, I had a lot of people say that my writing wasn't very good. And that really held me back until, in the last 10 years, when I wrote my book. It was really a compilation of journaling that I had done for a couple of years. And I was good at journaling, and then I stopped for a few years, and I've been going back the last 6 months with different things, and 9/11 and some things about when I lost some babies. I wrote those particular things down, and then I would have a long period of time where I wouldn't write. And I'm thinking, why aren't I writing all the time? Because for me, that's very creative, and I get a lot of emotions out. It's very good therapy. But I write monthly for a magazine. It's called Positive Tribe. And so every month there might be times when I'm writing on the deadline or a day after the deadline. Sometimes I need that extra pressure to get it done. I just sit down and I just let my mind go, and I'll think of one thing. And for instance, yesterday I wrote an article for the 4th of July coming up, and I started thinking about when I was young and the picnics we had. And I thought about freedom to choose. Well, freedom to choose could be a very political thing right now. And I said, I don't want to go there. I want to think about, I'm free to choose a hamburger, hot dog, corn on the cob, potato salad. And I started thinking about all the foods that we used to eat and the memories they brought back. And it was so much fun to write that, because I relived going to picnics and parades when I was a kid.
Wow, that's awesome. Instead of thinking, very politically and very, I guess, professionally, you thought, went back to the memories you had and used foods and anything. That can be really great because people can connect with them and they can think of memories that they've had and link them with your memories, which is really cool.
Well, and I was talking to my dad, and I was telling him what I was doing, and he laughed. He goes, well, 4th of July for me was his mom's birthday, my grandmother's birthday. So when he was growing up, he always thought that America was celebrating my grandmother's birthday. And I'm like, what a fun thought, fireworks and food and everything else.
Yeah. Must have been a great birthday every year. Look up and it's fireworks.
It was great.
And you lost over $1 million because of a scam online. So how did your creativity play a role in getting back up on your feet?
Well, I had to keep food on the table. I had to keep my business running. And the creative part of me was, don't get stuck. Don't let this guy have the power over me anymore. And realize, first off, I had to forgive myself and realize that what I had done, a lot of people do. And that's why I got creative in my mission after that. I took that pain point and made it my passion and my purpose in what I'm doing now. And that's really important, because then I had to figure out, well, how can I it's very easy to just get under a rock and hide under a rock and just say, I don't want anybody to know about this. I made a mistake and it was really dumb of me. Well, it wasn't dumb of me. It was one of those things that happens, and we all have something happen to us in our lives that we're not, the most proud of. But I learned from it, and that's where I got creative. I had to figure out, how can I make something good come out of something so bad? And for me right now, I did write the book and I have the podcast, but the most important thing that I've done from that and gotten creative in the process was, how can I spread the message of be careful? It's beware and be aware. And I worry about, women and men that are over 50, like your grandparents' ages, and then young women your age, because we don't think about it, but everybody's online right now. Everybody's looking for friends. Everybody's looking to be connected worldwide, and we're trusting the pictures we're looking at. So we're trusting that artwork, which is that, picture of some good-looking man, some good-looking guy, some good-looking friend. And I was talking with a 16-year-old a couple of weeks ago, and she was connected with some gentleman. She lives here in Florida. He was in Connecticut. He was telling her he's in Connecticut. Didn't even have a real picture. It was just an avatar. So she was having this 6-month friendship with this guy in Connecticut, but he didn't want to ever show his face. And I'm thinking, most teenagers I know have pictures everywhere. And I think he was probably a scammer. And I said, you've got to be really careful, because you cannot believe the pictures you're looking at, which is in art, looking at you and I are talking. I interviewed a gentleman one time whose photographs had been stolen by scammers to create profiles, fake profiles. And then women, he was in the Army, he was an Army colonel, women would fall in love and think they were talking to that gentleman. It wasn't him. It basically was ruining his life, because someone had taken all of his pictures. So think about it, all the pictures you guys put on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever, they can be taken and used by other people, and they don't need your permission. So that's very dangerous, and that's what I want you guys to be aware of. Be really careful that when you're talking to somebody, and this is where I was going on this video, he wouldn't let me video chat with him, because he knows the scammers can change what he says. They are very, very, very intelligent, and they're actually well trained overseas also. So I just want people to be really careful that when you're talking with friends and you don't see their faces, be really careful, because they may not be your friend.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's awesome you're doing this. And even like school, people talk about, know who you're talking to, be safe, don't give information out to random strangers. But, people I don't think have actually heard from people that have fallen for these things, and this has happened to them, and they've got scammed and they lost money like you. So I think it's great that people can actually hear it from someone who's had experience and has witnessed something like this.
Well, it's really important. And I want folks to know, especially, you young women, that don't think that it couldn't happen to you, because as soon as you think that you're too good or you're too smart or you're too whatever, they're going to get you, and they become your friend. And that's where the trust level is. You might be a little bit wary at first, but over a period of time, it's called grooming. They get to be your friend. And then they'll say, I'm having some trouble with something. Can you send me an iTunes card, or can you send me whatever? You guys have access to parents' credit cards, so parents beware. But it starts very little sometimes, and then it gets bigger and bigger. And I found too that some of the younger girls are so easy to give their pictures out online. And you don't want to be sending people your pictures, especially pictures of your body that you wouldn't show anybody. Once it's out there, it's out there. And then they can use any sort of blackmail, or they can go to your parents and say, hey, I've got pictures of your daughters. And you just don't put yourself in that situation. So just be very, very careful. Don't ever send money. Don't send pictures unless it's your face. You're playing sports somewhere or drawing a picture. But just be very, very careful of who you give your personal information out, and never give your bank account, your parents' bank account, debit cards, none.
Yeah, definitely. I totally
Just be
agree.
careful.
Yeah, the world's a huge place, and you never know what could happen. So I think it's really important to be careful, especially, these days where technology is everywhere.
And you guys need to be really careful too, because, you know, it's so easy to say, well, I'm playing lacrosse at such and such a high school at 3:00 and your picture's there. So they know who you are, where you're going to be, what you look like, and leads to trafficking. I hate to say that, but it does. They pick people up, and this is not to scare people. This is just to make you guys aware. It happens all the time. I'm down in South Florida. It's a big deal down here. It happens in West Virginia. It happens in California. It happens everywhere. And we're so unsuspecting because we're so trusting of friends. Okay? They're not your friends. And just be really careful.
Yeah. And after your financial loss, you started to help coach people so that they wouldn't fall prey to this scam, as we were just discussing. Mm-hmm. So how was your creativity a part of making sure that people actually understood the consequences?
You know, it's really difficult because if you try to prevent someone from being scammed, they're thinking all along, never going to happen to me. So you have to get creative and say, this is what I say now. I said, I understand that you will probably not ever be scammed, and I hope you will not. But what if it were to happen to your mother? What if it were to happen to your best friend or your sister? You know, put it out of them into someone else. Wouldn't you want to protect your best friend from having this happen to her? Wouldn't you want to protect your grandma? You don't want your grandma on the computer and having some scammer get to her. It's really easy, especially with the older folks, because they trust people. Getting creative on the other end when someone has not listened and has, you know, gotten involved, and we can't stop them at that point. We have to wait till they've crashed and burned, and I say broken, which is unfortunate because the scammers are very quick to isolate the person, to not have them listen to anybody outside. Like when my boys would say, Mom, don't, I'm thinking, well, I'm the adult here, you know, leave me alone. Because don't, like reminds me of my, you know, 3-year-old grandsons. Don't, and they go and do it anyway. So no one could have stopped me while I was in the middle of it. Now, after the fact, all I wanted was education. How did they do it? Why did they do it? All these things. And that's what I get creative with now. I am on the board of directors of an organization in Miami called SCARS, which is a Society of Citizens Against Relationship Scams. We are there to support victims of this and their families through education, through making them aware of what is happening out there, because so many people have no clue that the scammers are on dating sites, they're on language apps, they're on words with friends. So many of the gaming sites are just full of scammers. Social media is full of scammers. So I get creative in coming up with ways to make people aware. And that's what I do my podcast for.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's great. And art can be therapeutic, and it can help people express themselves. And it can help people through difficult situations. So has art ever helped you through difficult situations?
For me, it's not art like drawing art. I'm not very good at that, but the writing was very helpful for me. I was able, and initially, you know, when I got into this scam, it was all through writing. And it was, my husband had died. He had died suddenly. And so it was very therapeutic for me to write all my feelings out, how I was so sad and how I was frustrated with work and all the, you know, my children and all that. So it was very therapeutic. And now for me, it's fun. It helps me, like we were talking about the 4th of July, it helps me to release a little bit of, you know, when I was younger and those feelings of being a kid again. And then dancing. I love music. And I was on a Pandora station this morning and it was playing the Mamas and the Papas, and you probably never heard of them, but I bet your dad has. And I was sitting in my car and my bones were just bouncing, and I'm like, you know what? That's what makes me feel good. And I don't dance well, but in my head I do. It's kind of like singing, you know, in the shower, you sound like an opera star. But those are the music for me is this form of art that's touches my soul. Because I can feel it, I can, you know, sleep to it, I can dance to it or run to it or whatever. So it's, I probably have talked too much about this, but it's, for me, it's that part, and seeing, you know, artists and like you that draw and paint. My grandma used to do that. And I always thought it was so neat that she could express herself, or that you can express yourself through that, because no, me stick figures. But for me, it's the music, and I can get creative just by listening to it or by, changing the radio station to something, trying to understand why my son's music is so different. trying to find the beauty in rap. Haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, well, different people are attracted to different things. So, I think it's amazing how also like different people can perceive things and perceive music and the meaning of the song based on their past experiences. And I actually saw this one quote somewhere, I forget where, but it was, when you're happy, you listen to the beat of the song, but when you're sad, you listen to the words.
Oh, very good.
Which actually makes, I don't know, I don't remember where I saw it, but it actually makes sense. When you're happy, you're just dancing to the beat and you don't really care what the words are. But when you're sad, you're emotional and you listen to what the song is actually saying.
That's really very perceptive, because that's true. This morning, I was very happy and I was just bouncing. After my husband passed away, my youngest son, who was 15 at the time, we'd be driving down the road and we'd hear a country music song and we would be listening to the words. And then, next time we heard that song, we would both start to cry, instantly, because we knew what the words said. So yeah, absolutely. That's so true.
Yeah. And I'm so sorry for your loss as well.
Thank you. Thank you. That's what started me into the whole online dating thing, was after he passed away. But
right.
Yeah. And that's one of those things too, to get creative after a loss like that. You have to figure out how you're going to move on. And we're all going to have something happen to us. We don't have tomorrow guaranteed. And so what I had to do is just figure out, how I was going to be able to keep the business going, how I was able to keep the family going myself. And it's very, very difficult, because you can get wrapped up into being so sad that you just isolate yourself from the world, and that's no good. And that's where music can come along, or watching movies. Oh, I used to sit and watch movies and I would cry a lot. Some of the movies would, have me crying. But then once you get that out and get the emotions out, then you start bouncing to the beat. You're not listening to the words anymore.
Yeah, definitely. And in your role as a CIA analyst, what creative skills did you need to be successful?
Well, I actually worked for DIA, which is the Defense Intelligence
DIA.
Agency,
All right.
which is okay. It's interesting. I couldn't tell much about what I did back then, but I did work with imagery. And so I had to interpret things through the imagery that I was looking at. And you got to get really creative to figure out, when you're looking at a whole forest somewhere, you got to get creative and thinking, what am I seeing? You look beyond the treetops. And it was an interesting life way back when.
Yeah, that sounds really cool.
It was very interesting.
Yeah, and also it goes back again to the point where how different people perceive things and how you have to use your creative skills to see what's there, look at the bigger picture.
Well, you have to be an analyst. You have to look at what's going on.
Yeah.
Do you see houses? Do you see, are you looking at a school, or are you looking at a hospital? If you're looking at a hospital, then there are ambulances around, or there are certain times when it may not be so busy. You have to just use your mental deduction on what's going on around there, because many people can see many different things, but it's a skill and it takes practice and time. And we got pretty good at it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And are you attracted to any particular artist?
Well, I think I mentioned earlier, I love Monet. I love that impressionistic type. But then I have pictures of, I love pictures of people, just to see their expressions. I was in India a year or two ago. And the colors, I love the colors of art, and the smell of things, creates, well, that goes back to the food thing. I just love the bright stuff like you do.
Yeah, it's awesome. Even all of my paintings, I don't really use dull colors. I always like things to be, bright and pop out, and
they're happy.
I don't want to give out give off like a sad vibe when someone sees my paintings. I'd rather it be like, oh wow, I'm happy, and that's very nice.
But
I don't
here,
know.
my book is called The Woman Behind the Smile. So we want to make sure that we're authentic in what we're doing, and that, when you're happy, of course you want your pictures to be happy, but there's going to be a day when you're sad. So maybe that picture's not going to be quite as bright, might have a little pop of bright in it. But we have to allow ourselves to feel the bad times too. And it's just knowing how to get through them and get out of them. And, if painting gets you out of it, then do it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And are you attracted to any particular art form?
Not really. I mean, again, when I hear art, I'm thinking pictures, but no, for me, again, it's music. So when I'm writing, I listen to classical music. When I'm just bebopping around the house, I'll listen to country music. It just depends on what I'm doing. That, like I said, when I'm writing, I don't want the distraction of lyrics. I just want the music, and I want to be able to feel the music. I used to teach my kids, we used to homeschool a little bit when they were younger during the summer, and we would have classical music on because that really helps the brain. Again, no distraction. Nothing particular.
Yeah, honestly, same. Like I like a lot, like I paint, but I appreciate all forms of art. I like music, dance, photography, all the forms of art. So I'm the same as you.
Absolutely.
And my Heartification project is all about giving back to the community. So how do you give back to the community?
Well, I have my nonprofit, and all of my podcast and the videos that I make out of them, they are labors of love. There's no money involved. It's all labors of love, because I feel that sharing other people's stories is really important, and it's worth my time. If we can educate people on some different topics, all the best. I work with my nonprofit down in Miami, and I do a lot with church. I do a lot with kids. And so, life is service. And the happier you are in giving of yourself to others, I think the better person you are, and that makes for a better day. So my service these days is mostly taken up with time with my mother and dad. They're 86 and 91. And I spend a lot of time with them right now, because I truly understand that we're not here forever, and that it's important to spend time with the family members that are around you, and, do what you can for them to make their lives a little bit easier.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. And how would you like people to get in touch with you?
They can go to my website, which is thewomanbehindthesmile.com. If anybody has been a victim, or what I call survivor of a relationship scam, an online scam of any way, they can write to me at Debby at Debby, and it's DEBBY at thewomanbehindthesmile.com.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
My pleasure. I was really excited when I give you a lot of credit for reaching out to someone that you didn't know, and to doing what you're doing. I think it's an excellent nonprofit and a good passion project, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Remember, if you want to find out more about this guest, please go to my show notes where I have all the links needed. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to my podcast series and help me by sharing it, leaving a rating, and a comment. I hope you join me on my next podcast. Bye for now.